Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview, sponsored by Infostar IT Solutions. I'm Mark Owen, and today my special guest is Rupert Bedell. He is the CEO of Fasthosts, the company that will soon be taking over the first largest building in the £107 million forum here in Gloucester. Welcome, Rupert. Welcome to Punchline Talks.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
No worries at all. Right, let's start with Fasthosts. I've known about the company for a long time. It's based on Southgate Street. But could you give us an overview of it, please? It's this kind of sleeping giant, really.
A little bit, yeah. So Fasthosts is a provider of internet services, and it's actually one of the longest serving UK businesses that has done this. So it was founded in 1998 by a young man called Andrew Michael. It was an A-level project, I believe, where he was looking to host his project and didn't find that the services were available. So he installed some internet cable and built a very basic kind of hosting platform, and quickly determined that he could sell this to other individuals and small businesses. And it grew from there, and it grew very, very quickly. This is 1998, so it was kind of early days of the internet. I think in 2002, it was listed as the second fastest growing tech company in the UK. And then fast forward to 2006, he sold it to Ionos Group, a German-based company, for north of 60 million. So a mental note to myself is to pay attention to my kids' A-level projects. It could make me a billionaire one day. And it's been based in Gloucester the entire time. So it was first moved into premises on Southgate Street back in the late 90s. We're still there today, albeit not for very much longer. We'll be moving. We are the first residents of the new digital forum in the heart of Gloucester, and we're looking to move in around about the end of this year. I'm very, very excited by that. But the company itself, we provide digital services to individuals and businesses of all size, ranging from very basic needs, so registering a domain or setting up email, right through to all manner of web hosting, up to the more kind of complicated configured servers that you might get from Amazon Web Services or Microsoft and so on. So we compete with the hyperscalers at that end as well. And we serve all manner of businesses in between.
How big is the company? What's its turnover, and how many staff have you got at the moment, Rupert?
So turnover is north of 40 million a year, and staff numbers for Fasthosts specifically, we're about 180, 190 full-time employees. We also have members of the Ionos group here in Gloucester as well. So Ionos being our parent company, so a lot of our call center staff from Ionos are here as well, and they'll be joining us in the forum when we move. So if you add Fasthosts and Ionos together, it's about 280 people here in the UK.
And hence you need the space. I mean, let's go over and have a quick look, if I can share the screen, and we'll have a look at the digital forum. Okay, there's the building. Hopefully you can see that, Rupert.
I can, yeah.
Okay, this is a couple of weeks ago this photograph was taken, but I believe you're going to be taking the left-hand side here, isn't it?
That's right. We're taking one sort of wing of the forum. We'll be taking all 4 floors of that, 2 of which will be our customer services team. So they'll be on the phone to customers. We offer 24/7 customer support. We're one of the very few organizations in the industry that still do that. We'll have all of our tech teams in there, and we'll have things like marketing, customer services, finance, HR up on the 4th floor. But we're incredibly excited by this. We think the facilities really are world class. Not just what we get in the office, but the surrounding businesses, the gym, the hotel, the rooftop bar. It's an incredibly exciting place to work. So we really can't wait to move in.
Now it's a bit of a punt, really, because I don't know, are all your staff back into the office? Because obviously taking on a lot of hybrid working going on still, as we know from COVID. Are nearly all your staff back in the office?
No, we operate a hybrid working environment like most businesses. Our general rule is you spend more time in the office than at home, and that normally equates to kind of 3 or 2 days in the office a week, depending on the individual. Some of our teams are in more than others. You'd imagine customer services spend more time in the office, very reliable internet and so on. That's kind of works quite well for them. Other functions, probably a bit more remote. Some of our marketing product teams continue to be quite remote. I think it's like most businesses, it's a mixed blessing. It's great that we have the flexibility and the agility. And sometimes you look at pre-COVID days and think, well, how did we do it when we were 5 days in the office all the time? Like, how did you run your life? But on the flip side, there's definitely, I don't think it's a lack of productivity. I think that's still there. And actually, I think people who do work from home in the majority of the time are very productive. It's more about the kind of buzz and the energy that you get in an office when you've got people about. And I think, individuals operate in different ways. I'm somebody who relies on the energy and input I get from other individuals. I like having conversations with individuals around the office. I like learning about new things through conversations at, the coffee machine, the canteen, and so on. It's how I kind of get under the skin of a business and understand how it works. And I do think that that's not just a CEO type thing. I think that helps people across the business. So I think we've lost something a little bit in the transition pre and post COVID, where we have a lot less people in the office day to day. And certainly my hope is the move to the forum, I think, encourages people to spend a little bit more time in the office. And it's something I'm sort of gently but firmly pushing the organization in that direction. I think the energy we'll get from that is it's intangible, but it's very valuable to an organization. And I don't think Fasthosts is unique there. I think this is, a lot of organizations are pushing their employees to come back in a little bit more.
Now, obviously, Fasthosts, you've been around like a long time, as you just explained. But what about looking for growth now? Where do you think the growth lies for the company?
Well, we think we can grow. We can accelerate our growth. At the minute, the last couple of years, we've been growing, in terms of customer number, around about 6, 7, 8% per annum. Without changing too much, we think we can get that up to around about 10% levels. And that's really by just being smarter with some of our marketing investments. We have changed our operation a little bit this year, where we've moved some of the functions out to Ionos parent group. So things like our performance marketing are being run by central teams in Germany now. That means we have less control, but actually we benefit from economies of scale, greater buying power, more direct negotiation with platforms like Google. And we've already seen some of our performance metrics really increase this year. Now, there's other things that we can do to improve that. So we think that might get us to around 10% growth. Our products in our product place are, I would say that they're very similar to a lot of what our competitors offer. It's quite hard to have very different hosting or servers. They're largely homogenized in the market. And we operate a very similar product set to the Ionos group. However, what we're seeing is a market trend where competitors are scaling back their customer services offering and doing more via email only or chatbots and so on. And we can already see that that's creating a lot of frustration and dissatisfaction with customers. Web hosting is a business critical service. If your website goes down, your business goes down, and therefore that can happen any time in the day, 4 o'clock in the morning. You lose connection, you lose server, and that's a big problem. And it's no good if you can only send an email to your company and it's not getting picked up straight away. So we think there's a gap opening in the market for really strong customer service. We have outstanding service record in Fasthosts. We have some of the best NPS scores in the industry. We have a Trustpilot score that's better than any other operator in this industry. We recently got up to 4.7 out of 5, and we're very proud of our record there. So what we are planning to do is really kind of anchor our brand around that service promise, to say no matter what size of business you operate, you will get outstanding customer service when you come to Fasthosts. And that means really you're going to speak to a human any hour of the day who will be patient, knowledgeable, and won't come off the phone until they've solved your problem there and then. So we think that's a service offering that will work effectively at any spectrum of business, whether you're a kind of a startup sole operator right up to a multinational. If you can absolutely rely on brilliant customer service at every interaction, then I think we have a very strong USP.
Do you think AI will sort of come along? Obviously, a lot of more companies are using it, but there is a danger where they lose that sort of human touch of things. Computer talking to computer, really.
Yeah, and I think that customers are already getting wise to AI service solutions. People are initially when it happened, I think people just weren't aware. now I get a sense when I'm being talked to by a bot, and that can get quite frustrating quite quickly. So look, there's no doubt it's going to play a part. There's no doubt it'll get better. I think what's happened at the moment, there's been such a rush to embrace it that service has fallen away in some places. And I'm now seeing more and more. I look at Trustpilot every day. I look at the comments that our competitors have. I'm seeing more and more this rising frustration of, I don't want to speak to a bot. I know I'm speaking to a bot. I don't want to have to send an email. My website's crashed. I've got a complicated problem that I can't fix with my server. I just need to speak to a human being. And then that just doesn't exist. For us, that's absolutely an open channel, 24 hours a day. Yeah, we have some of the shortest waiting times in the industry. You get straight through to a customer service operator. I spend as much time sitting with customer services as I can because I'm new to this business, and I think that's the best way to kind of learn what's going on. And I've been struck by not only how knowledgeable our frontline teams are, but how patient they are. There's no rush to kind of get the customer off the line and answer the next call. You see this. My background's in banking, and I'm kind of used to seeing that this sort of constant pressure to make the call time smaller and smaller and actually get the customer off the line and then go to the next call. At Fasthosts, there's this incredible patience to just sit with the customer, problem solve, sometimes by a process of elimination. It might be something quite complicated. We've got to test a few different avenues. Most problems, about 90%, we can solve on the phone. So we can take ownership of their server, we can do that remotely, and we can fix the problem there and then. And just seeing the delight in customers when we can do that. They really agonized over these problems. They haven't necessarily understood what's happening. So to have somebody patient and knowledgeable fix that on the phone, and then the customer hangs up and it's all fixed again. That's unusual in B2B. How many of our utilities providers can we ring up and get through and not be on the line for hours and hours, but also they fix the problem there and then. If you ring your water company, your electricity company, these problems don't get fixed there and then. You just move it ahead, and then 2 weeks later you get a call back, and so on and so on. So I love seeing that delight in our customers. They say, "You fixed it. I can see it's done." Brilliant. It's a magic moment. And I think if you do that and you do it consistently and you do it well, you've got a customer for life. So these are some things that we are prioritizing and making sure that we don't compromise on.
Now, you touched on it a little while ago that obviously you're new to the business and come from the banking sector. What was it like coming in, stepping in as a new CEO? What was your thinking beforehand? How are you going to approach it, Rupert?
Yeah, honestly, I came with very little insight into the industry, the business. You do as much as you can in terms of the research. But I hadn't held a CEO position before. I've come through marketing. That's been my background. I was a CMO at several companies. So I certainly operated at a senior level, but always with a pure marketing brief. So I thought a lot about the type of CEO that you want to be. And I really kind of borrowed a lot of stuff from good CEOs that I'd seen. And to be honest, some bad CEOs where you think, well, that's what I need to avoid, that set of behaviors. So I've thought quite a bit about the culture that I want to implement at Fasthosts, the way that I think we should operate. But all of that is research. You don't really know until you get your feet under the desk and you can measure the temperature of the room and you can see how the company operates. And sometimes my natural inclination is to jump to the solution very quickly and say, well, I know what we should do here. I'm trying to curb that part of my personality at the moment and just sit back and absorb. I'm 6-7 weeks into this role. I have a lot of thoughts about what we should do, but I'm making sure that those are properly road tested before we kind of roll out. But honestly, it's really exciting. One of the things I would advocate to anybody listening to this is, at times in your career, it's a brilliant thing to take yourself out of your comfort zone and go and do something completely different industry, different type of role, jump in at the deep end. I personally get a huge amount of energy from that. If I've been in a role for 3-4 years doing the same thing, that's fine. You know it inside out. You know the people, you know the industry, but you're probably operating on a kind of comfort level. I think when you do then step out and go and do something completely different, as I've done here, the energy and motivation and extra drive you get from that. I really thrive on that. I quite like that. So I'm in that moment, and hopefully will be for the next year or two, where you just get this burst of energy and enthusiasm and drive, and it's great. The days just fly by. You come into work 8 o'clock in the morning, before you know where you are at 6 p.m. and it's another day done. You just got to make sure you keep moving in a forward direction.
Well, would you say is the biggest thing that you learned on this particular bit of your journey about yourself?
Um, yeah, I mean, look, the learning is still coming. At the moment, I'm sort of drinking from the power hose in terms of learning about the industry. I think probably the biggest learning point so far is just the reminder of how refreshing it can be when you go and do something totally different. And I'm 49. I at times in the past when you've sort of come out of a role, and I've moved job quite a few times in my career. I think I've moved 7 times. The last one or two, I've questioned whether I've got still the same level of energy and motivation and drive that I would have had maybe when I was, my 20s or early 30s. And a lot of my peers think the same. I'm seeing this across people my age, friends of mine. They're all doing well in their careers, but they are all asking the same questions of how much more have I got? I've got maybe another 10 years of work, maybe 15. Do I still have the same drive and energy? And I've answered that question by taking this role unequivocally. I do. If you change it up and you do something different and you give yourself a new leadership challenge, as I've got with Fasthosts, a different industry to work in, different competitive environment, different commercial pressure. It's I don't think it matters how experienced or how old you are. When you get that brief, I feel like that I've really got the energy and drive back.
Is there anything that you would have done differently when you first walked through the door?
For Fasthosts,
Well, yeah, I tell you what, for any business actually. What was in a way, what was the biggest mistake you made? Is what I'm trying to get at. Is there something that you've done in your career and thought, actually, do you know what? I just shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have made that move, or
yeah, I think so. And look, one of the things I've always done is jump in at the deep end. I've sort of lived by the mantra of you never regret what you do. You definitely regret what you don't do. If you don't take chances, you sort of think and reflect that I should have done that. Whereas, I've done lots of things. I've often dived in. My career took me to some interesting places early on in my career when I was working at Barclays. I'm not sure I regret any of it. Some of it didn't work out. I took roles sometimes for seniority, promotion, even though I was moving into an area that I probably wasn't in love with. They just didn't work. At one point, I chased a promotion in Barclays. I would have been about sort of 27, 28, and it was in a more kind of strategic role. But it was a grade up, and I felt like I was very ambitious and moving in the right direction. 6 weeks in, it just wasn't me. I was absolutely miserable, and I was doing a rubbish job. When you're miserable in a role, you're not at your best. And then I took off and went to Australia for a year. I took a career break and disappeared. My hiring leader, who was a lovely guy, wasn't enormously impressed with this. 6 weeks in, right, I'm going to go and travel to Australia for a year. But he was a good guy and he got it. He saw the bigger picture and he said it's never a bad time to travel. So that was one where I went after something. It's completely the wrong decision. Then you pivot, and then I went to Australia and I traveled the world, and that was an incredible experience. Did things that were totally different, and so I don't regret any of them. I definitely made some mistakes, but then they took me in an interesting direction.
Well, let's backtrack to your earlier career, if that's okay, because you're obviously from Ireland. Where are you actually from, and how did you come over to the UK, and when did you come over to the UK? Um, and then I've got this lovely photograph of you as a younger chap as well, which I'll show in a second. So, where are you originally from, Rupert?
So I come from a place called Malahide, which is a town about 6-7 miles north of Dublin on the coast. A really idyllic place to grow up. It's absolutely beautiful. It's lovely beaches. It's got a medieval castle, a beautiful town centre, a restaurant. It just, I really couldn't have asked for a better place to grow up. I went to school in North Dublin, a school called Mount Temple, which is famous for one thing. It's where U2 went and met. So that is the meeting place of U2 where they grew up. I went to university in UCD, one of the main universities in Dublin. I studied engineering, which at the time I had massive interest in engineering, other than it was a very, oh my goodness, look at that. Great days of hair. There we are.
Sorry, you mentioned it, not me. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what? I look at that photo with mixed feelings because although that was the day I graduated from UCD in 1996 with my engineering degree, I was quite relieved to have passed because I struggled with some of the more kind of technical aspects of that course. But despite the fact the sun is shining and I'm smiling, I can already see the old thinning crown and a sign of things to come in the years that followed. But yeah, that was 96, graduating from UCD. I had one further year in university. I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't really know how to get into the engineering industry. I think at that stage, you had to sort of wait for somebody to die to then get a job at the junior rung of the ladder and then spend 55 years working your way up. So it didn't excite me hugely to go and work for Dublin County Council as a civil engineer. So I enrolled in a postgraduate course in business studies. And that sort of opened up my eyes, not necessarily to business studies, but particularly to marketing within that was quite an interesting module. And I really enjoyed that final. It would have been a fifth year in university, 4 years engineering, 1 year business. And I thought, well, this is much more my street. I'm really kind of into this. There was the kind of major banks were doing the kind of milk round at the time. So you'd the likes of Barclays, Lloyds, and so on. And they would often come over to Ireland and do a quick tour of the universities and interview students and so on. And I was lucky enough to get recruited onto the Barclays graduate program. And we didn't have Barclays in Ireland, but we knew it as a really powerful UK bank with a fantastic graduate program. And although I had no interest in banking whatsoever, it just felt like a very smart thing to go and do. There were safer options, potentially staying in Ireland. There was another job potentially in the IT industry, which is, ironically where I've ended up. But I felt like, Barclays, London, this was the sexiest job on offer. And, didn't really care about finance, but I thought this will take me to some interesting places, which it definitely did. So I moved over to the UK in 97 and just lived the life. It was a brilliant time. You had the very first job, they literally trained you for about a week and then threw you into a branch as the branch manager, age 21, knowing absolutely nothing. And you're dealing with customers straight away and they're complaining about their overdraft or, you've swallowed their card or some other complicated thing that you didn't know how to deal with. So terrifying, but brilliant, to get that experience and to sort of learn at the very sort of steep end of the learning curve. And then you had various sort of modules in different functions, corporate banking, IT, marketing, etc. So I did all those, got sent to different places, worked in Coventry for a little while, worked in Northampton. I was sent out to Gibraltar for a year, which was a really interesting place to be. So this would have been about 1999. And then I sort of came off that graduate program and took my first management job in Barclaycard in Northampton in a marketing role. So I was definitely, marketing was the thing that I wanted to do. That was a brilliant time to be working in a place like Barclaycard, because actually if for people with long memories, they became the sponsor of the Premier League in 2001. They were one of the founding members of the Nectar program alongside Sainsbury's and BP. So we were just all over the marketing, and that was Barclaycard specifically, which was kind of a brand unto its own back then. So I got a great sort of marketing learning curve through all of that.
Were you involved in any? Were you involved in any particular campaigns of those? Obviously there are huge marketing opportunities there. Premier League, Nectar cards, brilliant. Everyone knows them. Were you cutting at the sharp end of making television adverts and things like that?
As much as I could, I was getting involved in these things. Now, I was a relatively junior marketing manager at the time, but I was all over the football stuff. I'm a huge football fan, so I was beyond excited when Barclaycard signed up this and all these sort of world of opportunities, the advertising, the access to football, the hospitality, what we could do with that, the products we would launch. I was like a kid in a playground now. So I was desperately trying to get onto these projects that would expose me to that. And I'm very lucky, I was able to get involved. Nectar, again, I was project managing some of our implementation into the Nectar scheme and understanding how a giant loyalty scheme like that works. So a really good kind of learning curve. I was definitely in the right place in that moment, which was fantastic. Now, unfortunately,
how did you go from Barclaycard? You took a year off to Australia. First up, why did you leave Barclays? Did you get promoted to the job that you're talking about?
Yeah, I was like most people, I was ambitious and I was chasing grades, which is a terrible thing to ever do. So although I was in a very happy moment in Barclaycard in marketing, I wanted to take the next step up and get to the next kind of grade in Barclays. So I was quite grade driven. And an opportunity came up in a strategy team working more in the main bank, so back in Barclays in a savings team. And I was successful in getting the job, so I was delighted. However, it was not the work that I wanted to do. So it was a kind of early learning moment. I really like it, marketing execution, when you're in the thick of it, you're in the campaigns and going and working in a head office strategy team, crunching numbers. absolutely not me. So 6 months or 6 weeks even into this new role, I was like, this isn't working out. I absolutely hate this. A few of my friends from Ireland were heading off to Australia for the year, professional career avoiders. They still hadn't really started a proper job, but they were finding another way to kill 12 months. And I thought that's where I want to be. So yeah, I took the option of a career break from Barclays. It was on offer at the time. You could literally leave for 12 months and then come back to your role. And I thought, well, why don't I do this? I'm 27. I can go and drink some beer in Sydney and do that for a year, which was great fun. And traveled all over New Zealand, Canada, the US, Fiji, did the whole backpacker thing.
How did you end up at Fasthosts then? You know, we've only got a couple of minutes left for this particular segment, but how did you do that little jump from that to that?
It was definitely not one little jump. I'll give you a really quick 30-second run through. I moved into a global brand team when I came back from traveling at Barclays. Fantastic couple of years, worked in advertising, traveled the world, worked in South Africa. Went to HSBC for 2 years. That was good, but it was another bank and actually not that different from what I'd done. I then took one of the biggest risks in my career and joined a unknown company, a company I'd never heard of called Money Corp. And I was head of marketing there / CMO. That was brilliant. The fastest learning curve I've ever had, going from a very comfortable corporate environment to an SME. And I would recommend that to anybody who's grown up in a large corporate. I left there 2 years later, went back into banking at RBS because it was a marketing director role. So I was running B2B marketing for RBS Group, which included NatWest and Lombard and Invoice Finance. Did that for 4 years. It was certainly a good education in leadership. I moved around a couple of times since then, worked in insurance for 2 years as CMO at a company called Unum. Then went to American Express for 4 years, probably the most successful commercial period of my career, a big leadership role running B2B marketing for American Express. Lots of changes at Amex, restructures. That came to an end in 2022. I spent a year in payments still at a company called PaySend, a fintech startup, scrappy, but brilliant, very fast moving. And that then took me to Fasthosts. So this opportunity came around earlier on this year, something totally different, a CEO position, which is not something I'd done before. I'd only really worked in marketing. The tech industry, which is not one I'd worked in. I had always been financial services, and I actually assumed that I'd never leave financial services. So I didn't mind that. It's a good place to be. There's lots of work. Wasn't super exciting for me at the time. I'd been there, 25 years. So the opportunity to go and jump industry and do something totally different was just too good to turn down. Different location. So I'm here in Gloucester. My home is London, but I'm now in Gloucester 4 or 5 days a week. And I like the adventure. I like going to some place new, the change of scenery. So yeah, it's so far 7 weeks in. It feels like a great move. I'm completely energized by it.
We'll have to take you to Kingsholm sometime and show you the lights of Gloucester Rugby as well. Okay, we're kind of running out of time now, Rupert. So I'm going to ask you a few personal questions. So what is your book that you're reading? Is something by your bedside cabinet at the moment? What novel are you reading, or what do you read?
I read what my wife is a voracious reader, so she will read. Particularly on holidays, she'll read a book a day. So if you want advice on books to read, Victoria Bedell is the person to go to. So I generally read what she puts in front of me. I'm currently laboring over the final book in the Hunger Games series. Book 1 is great, book 2 is great. 3 and 4, I don't recommend. I'm stuck on 4, but I'm determined to finish it. So once I'm done with that, I've got a whole stack of books to read. Yeah, I've got a lot of books to get through.
Okay, and if there's something on your CD, what would that be? Who's your favourite band?
Oh, I'm getting a bit old fashioned. So I'm 80s and 90s. Absolutely. The 90s for me I'm not sure there'll ever be another period like it for British bands. So for me, that kind of Radiohead, Supergrass, Kula Shaker, Blur, Oasis, Britpop. I find myself just continuously going back there. And actually, a couple of months before I joined Fasthosts, I had a little time out between PaySend and Fasthosts. I had time to start a band, which is something I'd wanted to do for ages with a couple of friends of mine. And we are just doing 90s covers, and I'm absolutely loving that. So we play occasionally at weekends around Wimbledon.
Okay, and what do you play yourself?
I do a bit of I do a bit of everything. So I sing and I play rhythm guitar and I play a little bit of piano, but I'm not great at any of them. I'm sort of one of those utility men in the band. The other guys are the talent, and I'll just sort of fill in where I
Oh, I
need to.
doubt that. I can't see that, Rupert. I'm very sorry, but you're very, very talented, mate. Unfortunately, right, okay. I'm going to have to ask you for your top three business tips, please.
All right, cool. So look, number one, and I mentioned it earlier on when I was kind of walking through the career. Jump in at the deep end. So it's something that I've always done. You know, those uncomfortable places where you think, "Well, this is very different. This is I'm not sure I can do this." My advice is jump in. You never know where you're going to go. I think, you know, when the Barclays opportunity came up, that was a very different and unusual one, but I couldn't resist. And it took me all over the world and to some places, you know, the chance to work in some great jobs. Equally, when Money Corp came along, a brand I'd never heard of, and I thought, well, I'm in a pretty comfortable position here at HSBC. I don't think I should do absolutely the right thing to do. Go for it. You know, go and work in a small company, feel the pressure, that everyday stuff, you will learn faster than you ever will sitting in a big company. So I think, number one, dive in at the deep end. It's always the right thing to do. Number two, if one skill I wish I'd been taught in university or in the early part of my career is the art of storytelling, not necessarily presenting, but storytelling. This is something that I've kind of learned throughout the 25, 27 years or so is people who can tell stories well stand out in a positive way. And I don't mean blagging or BSing or whatever. I mean actually being able to get your point across in a really concisely told story. And I found myself just starting to analyze good presenters from bad presenters and what it was about these good presenters, CEOs and so on, that made them able to really hold their audience. And it was really the art of being able to tell a story. And not necessarily what you're saying, but the way it made people feel about you when you told that story. You know, a sense of confidence or a sense of, right, this guy really knows where he's going. He knows what he's doing. He's able to just craft this story. He's not relying on a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides. He's actually telling me a story about this particular lesson. So look, whether you're in an interview, whether you're presenting to board, whether you're just doing a team meeting, whether you're just in a one-to-one conversation, I think if you can bring stories to your work, I think it's an incredibly effective way of communicating. And I think that's, you know, above any other skill, the ability to tell short, concise stories is incredibly powerful. And the third one for me, look, this feels like a very obvious one, but I haven't always done it, but I'm determined to do it now, which is bring fun to the workplace. Somebody said to me earlier on, I have no idea who it was, but it stuck with me, is, you know, think less about what you do in work, but more about the impact you have on others, the relationships you build, or how much you make your colleagues' working life more enjoyable. I thought, wow, that's an interesting thing. I never really thought about it. I was always trying to, you know, get things done or, you know, get the big sort of, you know, pat on the back. But actually, when you come into work, think about the impact you have on your colleagues. And a couple of times in my career, I think at Money Corp and particularly at American Express, we just created a really fun environment. And somebody I worked with recently played that to me and said, you know, that was one of the best times in their career, the most enjoyable time. And because of, you know, how we worked as a team, it was pre-COVID, it was, you know, it was a fantastic environment. I thought those are incredibly productive places and efficient, and you get the best out of people. It's just fun. You know, people look forward to coming into work because you've created this brilliant environment. So, and it's, you know, it pays back. And it's fun for you too. So something I'm determined to try and do at Fasthosts is just make this a really fun place to work.
Well, Rupert, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. Thank you also to my wonderful hosts, Infostar IT Solutions, and we'll catch you again very soon. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for listening to Punchline Talks. Thanks, Rupert. Bye.
My pleasure.